Good to go.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. Um, we got a little bit of a reprieve on the deep freeze today or yesterday, so not too bad. How did everybody do with, again, concentrating on the auto flow and live flow? We talked about last week about organizing the auto flow, so or at least over the next 90 days. Anybody complete that task?
Yeah.
No? Yes? Maybe?
I've been a bit distracted.
Okay.
I didn't.
All right. That's fine. Hopefully it was a good distraction and had some business happening. No?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Then I know you guys were working on it, Herbert. Matthew, did you guys complete it at all or at least
Yeah,
expand
we
on
did
it?
quite a bit, but one thing I found is went through Lofty and we found some errors with the Lofty program. So I think in doing this exercise, it definitely helped out in other ways that were unexpected as well.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And part of the thing is, the auto flow, it really relies on being in your CRM program pretty well daily.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where a lot of agents unfortunately don't. But you need to be sort of into your database, your CRM daily and looking for the opportunities, looking to make sure it's functioning properly, addressing any missing points in it, right? And that's why it's important that, one of the first tasks should be, okay, what's going on in my CRM? And making sure your CRM is actually all in one spot per se, because I know some agents have some over here, they have some over here, and that's fine if you're going to check all of them. Okay. How'd everybody do with a little bit of your live flow? Any conversations? How many during the week did you have? Anybody track it again? Wow, nobody working?
I did some, like I'm not tracking it,
Right.
but from my either WhatsApp or Instagram, or even Messenger, Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
Because of the weather, I didn't even say anything about real estate, So
Yeah.
a few people, we were just chatting back and forth.
Okay.
And so it came out, that I'm in touch with them and things like that. That I think that alone will help me get some potential flow later on. Like
Okay.
I don't expect people to say, "Oh, I want a list," or
No, and that's not the idea, right? The idea
just to keep in touch with
the idea is just to make sure that you're having some live flow, that you're actually having meaningful conversations where when I say meaningful, that you're supposed to be doing something.
Mhm.
You're tracking how many you're having. We originally talked about trying to do 50 in a week. And so now it's a matter of how many are you actually doing? You have to monitor that.
Mhm.
Nancy, you had a question?
I was just going to say, you said, is anybody working? That's when I put my hand up. I actually do have a listing that I'm actually getting the paperwork signed today at 4:45. I saw these people a couple weeks back when I said I had a listing appointment. They had to declutter and all that kind of stuff. So today I'm actually getting the paperwork signed.
Okay, good. That's super. What are you getting?
It's a small it's a small house, just literally 2 streets up from me. I'm going to list it at 322. It needs quite a bit of work, but it's very, very close to the lake. Like you walk out the front door and down the driveway, and the lake is like right there. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a good selling feature for this one.
Good.
So
Super. Okay. Great. Good job.
thanks.
Did anybody take the initiative to take that CREA article and start putting it out to your database? Now, I'm going to assume, Elroy, with the character behind you with the thumbs up, that means you did.
No, that means I got a deal.
but he's
All
always
right.
there. He's always there. Maybe I'll just move
Right.
over like this.
I know. You got it. You got a deal over the week during the
Well,
week?
no, not really. Well, I might have two coming. Um, Bit of a short story. I almost put my foot in my mouth and found out there's a divorce coming. So it sounds like I got a listing and a buy coming out of it. Like, whoops.
Wow.
So, yeah, the quick bit of backpedaling and all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, you're going to sell now, aren't you? Like, ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah, turn that conversation around fast.
Good. Good. Well, look, that article, and again, we talk about, doing your auto flow. I basically took the initiative and I put it out and I personalized it. And I put it out to 10 people. I'm going to try and I'm going to do some more. Out of it, I have 2 conversations continuing on from it. Just by putting it, emailing it out and personalizing it by just basically saying, as per our previous discussion, that could have been 6 months ago. It doesn't have to be yesterday. And, and so I put it out. I've got a meeting Friday with somebody that I sent it to who opened it up within 10 minutes of me sending it to him and responding. I had somebody else I sent it to, didn't get any response from some of them. So I've been sending them a text and just said, hey, just want to let you know, I did email you some real estate information from the Canadian Real Estate Association. I thought you or somebody might find valuable. And it's amazing from that I get, oh, sorry, Scott, I must have missed it. I'll look for it. So if nothing else, you can use it as a way to email it to them, to follow up with a direct message. Okay. And it's all you're trying to do is add that to your flow. Okay. CMHC just came out with another article yesterday. Like, you got to look for this stuff and be able to use it. But if you're not going to do it, then you can't be bitching 90 days from now going, I don't know why I don't have any business. Okay. Like, conversations need to be done. You need to initiate it. There is so much negativity out there with regards to real estate. Most people, consumers, are sitting on their hands and not doing anything. There's business out there though. But if you're waiting for the phone to ring, or you're waiting for your email to beep, or you're waiting for leads to come in, unfortunately, folks, it's going to be a long year. Okay.
Matthew and I have taken the steps to just ask for referrals. And I found that has been a great way to get people to say, hey, my friend, or this person I know. And that just happened to me last night, where somebody approached me. He's like, hey, I was just talking to this lady. She's home by herself. Kids have moved out. She doesn't know what she wants to do. Do you want to call her? And I'm like, yeah, give me the number. Yes. So
yeah,
it started with asking, saying, hey, would you mind, referring me out to your friends and family? By asking, I think people now are keeping me on top of mind and saying, hey, I know somebody I trust and I recommend.
Created a flow.
I created a flow because I find that there's many agents in my gym. There's 3 of them actually, but nobody says anything about it. And so I've taken the initiative to go up to the owner of the gym and my friends and stuff and say, hey, would you mind referring me out to your friends and family? And they have. So
you got to ask.
You got to ask. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of agents, at least the people I know, don't do. They're not asking for those referrals.
Well, the issue is that most agents think that, well, they know I'm in real estate.
Right.
They'll refer me when the time's there.
Not gonna happen.
Right? And that's not something that happens. So you have to make sure that you're doing, these things and utilizing, like the article from Korea. It really is. It's a generic article, talks about what's going on, but you have to utilize it and make sure that you are following up with it, right? The idea of the auto flow, absolutely. The auto flow it's an email, it's an auto text campaign, whatever that is, but you have to then break it down so that you are tracking individually the people that are in your database. Okay? Like, it's great to have the auto flow, but to create the live flow, you have to take that extra step. And that extra step is the moneymaker. Okay? The auto flow is just to keep you, give you reasons to reach out to them. It's the actual live flow that turns it into a better relationship, turns it into referrals, and it turns it into business over and over and over. But if you're not going to do those steps, in all fairness, man, it's just not going to work for you in real estate. Okay? And I know it's a hard thing to understand because we have come through a period of time in the last 10 years, let's say, where people, they knew you were in real estate, everybody was active. Well, there's a lot more outside influences now where you got uncertainty, you've got economy issues, you got job security. So, but transactions are happening. And so if you want to get your percentage of it, you've got to be out there. You've got to be making the contacts. Like, as I said to you, I booked a lunch with one of my friends who I hadn't seen in a while. At the end of it, and I picked up lunch. I said, hey, I invited you. We had a great conversation about what he's doing, what he's doing business-wise, found out about the family. And I basically said to him, like, this is a year of opportunity. And he said, you know what? You're right. Like he said, I'm my business, and he's the one that does a lot of the laneway homes, things like that. And now there's an opportunity for him that he's looking at taking those laneway homes, putting them together in a row and looking at them as being units that he can actually do in Northern Ontario for the mining industry. Right? So using them as temporary shelters. And he says, then we can take them apart and move them somewhere else. So after chatting with him, I get a message from him. He says, you know what? He said, I'm so thankful that you reached out to me. He said, I'm more energized now after our meeting, and I've got some great ideas. And by the way, I've got some projects coming up that I want you to help me work on. Just by reaching out to somebody and starting off with how's family, right? Where are you at? You got any trips planned? And by the way, how's the project going? Right? You got to do those things. I got a friend of mine who's in Jeff Atkinson in real estate. Tim Hortons is his favorite place. He goes to Tim Hortons. He leaves his real estate stuff up top. He lets people know, hey, I'm at Tim Hortons at this location. You got time? I'd like to buy a coffee. And he does that through his database until somebody says, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll be right over. Simple. All the other people that said no, what do you think they think of Jeff? Hey man, thanks for asking me out. Thanks for thinking of me. You got to look at doing those kind of things. Okay? But you got to track your daily stuff. You got to look at what you're doing daily. Again, even if it's like, start with an hour a day. Because I'm going to tell you the majority of agents aren't doing it. They just aren't doing it. And I don't want to see you guys being, 90 days down the road going, I don't know why it's not happening. Well, we know what the formula is. Okay? And there's business out there. You just have to have that many more conversations. And I know I keep preaching this, but I'm preaching it because I've lived it. I've lived 21% interest rates. I went through in 1990 when the market crashed. I was here in September of 2008 when the banks in the States collapsed. It affected us here. Business was still happening. Okay. People still have to buy and sell no matter what is going on in the economy. It's just a matter, are you doing enough to have those opportunities? Or are you going to be like most agents and just sit back and go, well, I did do some of it. It's not going to cut it. Okay. And again, it's not going to cut it. So when we talk about this auto flow and live flow, that's business. And you've got to make sure that you're tracking it. Okay. Any new listings that happened over this week? Any sales? Any situations that came up? Okay.
I took out a first-time home buyers on Saturday and looking at one home that they really liked. So, but it was great because I was doing exactly what we've been learning here, asking those questions. When, why, what are you going to do with your home? What is it that you like about this and don't like, and started asking because in this particular home, the basement flooring seems like it was painted. It was very strange. And already they were like, "No, I don't like that." I'm like, "But that's an easy replacement. That's probably $20,000-$30,000 to replace. We can take that off the price." Oh, okay. I didn't think that. And I'm like, thank goodness I asked that question because it would have been an automatic, no, we don't like the house.
Yeah. And again,
now it's back on the list in terms of, oh no, we're interested actually.
Yeah. Good. And that's it. Like you've got to be asking the questions. You've got to lead the conversations.
Yeah.
Right. So, another situation just to share with you. So when you are, I get questions from buyers, more from buyers or people that have a lot that, and maybe, Elroy, you guys might get this, Nancy, you might get it more, just where people start asking about, what do you think I could build on this property? What are the steps you take? And for anybody that's done it, I just did it I've done it many times, but I had the opportunity of doing it one more time, and I'm working on it. But what steps do you think you need to take?
I can answer some of that.
Perfect.
When you list vacant lands, I've got 4 vacant properties right now. Always know the zoning, always know like what's allowed, always know what the setbacks are. Those are the questions that people are going to be asking. And you need to know when you list that property, you need to know.
I agree,
Yeah.
absolutely. Zoning is where you start. Because
Yep,
that'll tell
zoning.
you what the use is, and then you can go from there, what kind of building you can put on and where.
Yeah,
And-
and if there's EP,
And I was gonna say, I'll check each individual parcel because some of them might have a wetland area or something. And then you could have 100-foot setback from an edge of water. So essentially your lot could be undevelopable because you can't put a road across a wetland or depending on where it is. Every
and what if-
vacant piece is very different.
and one of mine has the pipeline going through it.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's
Oh, wow.
setbacks from the pipeline as well.
Yeah.
It's natural gas,
Okay.
Nancy, or is it oil?
It's natural gas.
So the reason I ask that is right now, and I'm dealing with this situation, is I have buyers that are looking at either buying resale or building. They have a lot, or they can buy resale. So you as the agent, how do you determine what's the best avenue for them?
I personally would tell them to lean to the resale and rebuild what's there because you're not paying development charges. Development charges
Okay.
can be huge.
Yeah, depending on where absolutely, okay. So here's,
Depending on the budget too, if they have budget to do all that work and,
Yeah.
pay somebody, there's a lot of headaches involved too. It doesn't just.
Well, I think we had a land for sale as well. And I think the biggest question that I kept on asking people is, have you had any experience building? And I think that's the biggest question because a lot of them had no experience. Like, no, I never built before. I'm like, okay, the first step is to find out what's your budget. Because looking at a piece of land, that's easy to go and see and envision your house. But then the second you start talking to a builder, you're like, wait a second, I didn't know it was going to be 500 per square foot, and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
asking those questions and dropping those ideas onto potential buyers is a great way to begin that conversation too.
Yeah. So yes, Nancy.
There's also the point that a lot of people don't understand or not understand. There's a lot of people don't realize that vacant land cannot be financed, not at a decent rate anyway. Like the
Right.
big banks will not mortgage vacant land, so you need to have the capital. If there's no, like if there isn't a building on it, or if there isn't a well and septic, I've run into this before, the banks won't finance it. So you need to have the capital to buy that piece of land. And then if you're going to build on it as well, like that's a whole nother menagerie of getting financing.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, because to do the build out, you need to have the ability to fund it. The other issue with doing a new build, it's not just the cost to build. There's engineers, there's development charges, there's city, even if it's in the city, there's city connection fees. There's a whole bunch what are classified as soft costs that go into building. Okay, so you have to be aware of that. But the first area that you as the realtor can take part in is determining what the zoning is. And then once you know the zoning, you dive deeper into that particular lot. And it's a matter of what the setbacks are, what the percentage of coverage, and does everybody understand what percentage of coverage means? Okay, anybody not understand that? Okay, yeah, okay. So for instance, if you have a lot, like if you go into zoning and let's say, well, the one I'm dealing with is R1-1. So R1-1 means they can build a detached house. And then on that particular lot, it's 30% lot coverage. So when they say lot coverage, it means that 30%. So if you had a lot that was 50 by 100, okay, you then just multiply 50 by 100. That gives you the square footage of the lot, and then it's 30%. So 30% of that is the maximum that can be built, actually surface covering. Not total square footage, but actual surface covering of the lot. And that includes any garages, any outbuildings, okay? So you have to know that to be able to say, like, for instance, the one I'm doing, it's now 30% coverage, but it also, if you're gonna do a 2-story, then you can go 2-story, okay? And then you just have to make sure what the setbacks are to look at what kind of house. For instance, my friend said, okay, this is the kind of house we have. Well, it's not going to fit on their lot because it's too wide and it can't fit within the setbacks. Okay, so those are things, but you can get a lot of that information. You need to be able to know how to go on to the city or the municipality where you are and get that. All right, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. The one thing you got to watch with the lot coverage as well is your landscape design. In Barrie here, if your driveway is paved, it's considered part of the lot coverage if it's asphalt.
Really?
But not if it's interlock. So if you have interlock stone, that's not counted, but your asphalt is. So yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. You drive through subdivisions here in Barrie and you'll see driveways where part of it's paved and then the rest of it's interlock. And that's why, because they've hit their cap on their lot coverage, so they interlock the rest of it.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's one I did not know.
Yeah, so when you
that's-
look at lot coverage, dig right into it and have a look and see. I've got that at my house, my driveway out front, part of it's paved, the rest of it's interlocked because I can't cover more of my lot, but I want that parking spot, so it's interlocked. It just looks nice now.
Nancy?
And the other comment I was going to make is do your homework before if you're going to call the city. I deal mainly with townships, but if you're going to call and start asking a representative a bunch of questions, they get really irritated. Do as much homework as you can first before you call and say, hey, I looked it up and this, and this. And I'm saying that because I have a family member that does that for a living. And she's like, realtors call all the time. And it drives us crazy. Just do your homework first. But they don't mind answering questions if you try. Just put the effort in first.
Yeah, and where I'm going with this is that it is easy to get the information. Majority of the municipalities will have online interactive zoning maps. Okay. And so you can start getting the information on what the zoning is. Then you dive deeper into that particular law. Okay. From the zoning map, it's going to give you, and then make sure you're dealing with the most update bylaw. Okay. And on right in the municipalities, they will give you a whole drop-down sheet. It'll say if it's an R1-1, here's what it allows, here's what the setbacks are. And then so when you do reach out to the municipality, you can say, I've reviewed the online information, I just need clarification. I just did that with Blue Mountains. And I thought, okay, like their building is literally around the corner from my house up north. I thought, oh, maybe I'll just pop in, and it says no in-person information. Everything's got to be online. I thought, okay, this is going to take days. I did a detailed email. I sent copy of the, and the reason is Geo Warehouse shows a different zoning than the actual municipality does. Okay. So I had to clarify which that was. And then I just emailed the general email with zoning questions. I was shocked. Within the next morning, I had a detailed email from a person at the township saying, here's the information, here's the details, here's all the setbacks, here's the coverage, there's no environmental issues, there's no, like, it was detailed. Because I did my homework, and she actually said, I appreciate that you looked into it, and these are viable questions, right? So now I can go to my folks, and what I did is I said, okay, based on the, that's why we're meeting Friday, but based on the floor plan that you've given me, it won't fit on this lot. So we're gonna have a discussion about that. But I also then was able to get cost per square foot to build based on the size of house. So now I have, because I've done my homework, which all of you should be doing, is I am now going to have a very detailed conversation with my clients on which direction to go. And if you're not going to take that initiative and you're not going to understand it, they're going to find another agent who's going to do it. Okay. That's the difference between looking out for them, because if they decide to build and that's the route they're going to go, then, and I think that's the best route for them, if it is, yeah, I'm going to miss out on a sale. I'm not going to get anything for helping them build, but at least I know I've done my homework and they know I'm looking out for their best interest. I know I'm going to make money down the road from them. I'm going to get referrals if that's the route they decide to go. But if you don't do your homework and you go, oh, I wouldn't build, I wouldn't do that, resale is the only way to go, they're going to look right through you and go, okay, are you looking out for you or are you looking out for me? Okay. Tools are out there to help you be professional. Okay. So let's make sure that you understand it's the relationship. That's why we talk about the auto flow, the live flow. This is not a short-term relationship. Do the homework. Look out for them. They're going to know you're looking out for them, and it's going to be a long-term relationship with bonus of making some great money from it and having a good time along the way. Yeah, Nancy.
And I think, excuse me, the other thing too is doing your homework. You might be doing your homework on like case A, which is in your, on your desk right now, but you do the homework now, like that stays in your head. Like any knowledge is good knowledge, right? Because you know for the next time.
Good point. Yep.
When it comes to, maybe for all three of you, when it comes to land, what's the timeline? Does land really sit for a while? In terms of it really requires the right buyer to buy them. What's the turnaround for vacant land? Again, depending on where it is, of course, but
there's no magic answer to that. It really depends. And sometimes it's the buyer. I mean, they'll see something in that piece of property that they gotta have it. But it could have been there for 2 years already listed. It's just the right buyer walking along. I sold a piece of land last was it Christmas? No, in January it closed in Gravenhurst, right by her. I mean, I looked at it and he told me what he wanted to do, and I said, I don't know, buddy. You might want to talk to the town planner about that little idea. I mean, it's a little far fetched. I mean, essentially wanted to open up a mini campground. I'm like, I don't know about that one. So he had within a week, a meeting with the town planner, laid out the guy's plans, and town planner said, yeah, we can support that, no problem. Done.
Yeah,
Done.
and
Yeah, but that was a highly
and
organized
that's-
buyer. I mean, that guy was, I mean, but that's the game he's in. He's into the construction software business, and that he's right up that alley, right?
Yeah. And when it comes to land, it really is like, what is the use? What is that person looking to use it for? You may drive by a big parcel of land and think, well, who the hell would be out here? And all of a sudden, some hunter goes, oh, I could put a hunt camp here, and it's gone. You can drive by a infill lot in the city, and someone looks at it and goes, yeah, I don't know, but then someone else drives by and goes, oh, you know what? I think I might be able to subdivide that, get 2 houses, or with the new rules, maybe I can get 3 units on it. So really, it's really going to depend on when it comes to raw land, what are the highest and best use for it, or what are the uses that it could have? And that's where your research has to come in, because all gets back to what's zoning going to allow.
Yeah, and that if you're
Right.
listing raw land, that's what you look for too.
Yeah.
That's where your marketing angle comes in. You know, if it can
And-
have a 3 units on it, market that.
Yeah, and that's where investigating that and understanding that is important, because always remember, real estate is what's the highest and best use for it. Okay? So when you're investigating it, yeah, it may have one zoning right now. But if all of a sudden you see this parcel of land and it's zoned a certain zoning, yet not far away, there's a different zoning, there might be an opportunity to rezone it. And a lot of times corner properties, I've had residential corner properties that have turned into commercial zoning because they're on a corner, because this township or municipality was looking and saying, okay, highest and best use for that location is actually commercial. So that's why if you're looking at land and vacant, then you have to really dive in and see what the zoning is, what is it currently, what could it be, or what else is in the area. Okay. Anything else on that? I'm just in the middle of that, so I thought, you know what, I'd share that, because I do get questions from our realtors a little bit on how do you find the zoning, right? And it really is, there's so much online that you can get. The municipalities, and I'm going to actually say because of COVID, they really upped their accessibility when it comes to online information. So, okay. Anything else? Are they going to be able to join us? Do you know?
In about 10 minutes, 10:45.
Okay. So a few more minutes. I've had questions coming to me, and I'm sure you guys are getting this. I've got a client or somebody, reaches out to you and goes, well, I bought a condo pre-built a few years ago. The builder's now informed me that it's ready for occupancy. I'm not in a position to close. What are my options? Or you get a seller who sells, goes through the condition period from the buyers, comes up to closing, and it doesn't close. Then you just have one of those this year? Yep. So what are you as the agent, what are the things that you should be doing? And then the other one is you represented the buyer. The buyer now comes to you, either disappears and they're not returning your calls, yet they bought firm.
Oh, boy.
And it's coming up to close. You got the other agents going, we still haven't got your lawyer's information for your buyer. And you're going, what position are you in? We're actually going to have friends of ours that are lawyers that are going to come on in about 5 minutes, and we're going to actually address those questions. But before we do, who's been in that situation and what have you done? Maybe Nasir, you just went through
You
it.
just-
So if you want to
So
speak
first
up
of
and tell
all,
us.
when I spoke to our lawyer, the seller's lawyer.
Yeah.
He first right away told me every agent that showed it during that time, 2 months ago. If any bites are there, let me know, but keep them hooked. You can't sell it yet.
Right.
So I did. I even showed it to one agent immediately that weekend before we even thought about putting it back on the market. And she wanted to put an offer. I said, no, we have to wait and put it on the MLS to open it up to the market because we can't undersell it to anybody or oversell it, doesn't matter what, without opening it up to the MLS, because then we could be sued too from the buyer who didn't close because we did undercutting, whatever.
Yeah.
So Monday or Tuesday, whatever day we listed it, within the next 2 days, we had about 3 or 4 showings and 2 offers came, one after the other, including that lady. We sold it for $20,000 more, so that was good. But the seller was really stressed because they had moved out. They were in a hotel, and the stuff was in storage.
My goodness.
So thank God they didn't buy anything yet. Somehow something told them not to buy. So anyway, so then the second buyer bought it. It closed in a month later. A huge deposit, 150,000. They did a small inspection condition or something, and everything was fine. So everything went through, and then it closed a month later.
Okay.
And then the deposit was held by us.
Yeah.
Where you can now,
Can't do anything with it until I have instructions.
which we did after a while. It took almost and I don't even think the buyer's 8 brokers still signed the mutual release. You said they don't have to.
Yeah.
As long as the buyer and seller signs it.
Correct.
And we are the holding deposit. I wonder if we could have sued them for 1%, like a percentage of commission of mine. We could have, right? Not to the seller. Well, the seller pays, so we should.
Yeah.
They bought something through me, so I'm not gonna touch that.
And so, so each situation is different, but there are steps that need to be followed that because the fact that, and we're going to hear about this and maybe, it's just going to be a little snippet of what it is, but I just thought I'm getting more and more of these questions, from agents that are getting from consumers that are in situations just like this. A lot of it is the pre-built, where they put the deposits down, hoping that they were either going to flip it before having to close it, or the interest rates when they bought it were much lower, so they were definitely in a position to afford it. With the higher interest rates, they're not now.
And the
So-
appraisal value will not come in.
And
Even they do finance it.
Yeah.
The prices have dropped so much that the property, whatever they bought for 2020 or 21,
Yeah.
now the values are 20-30%, whatever,
Yeah.
lower.
So again, it's not going to appraise, so they're
Even more down.
then they need more down payment. So what we have to look at is us as realtors, what do we have to make sure we follow? First and foremost, follow the instructions of your client's lawyer's advice. Okay? Because each situation is different. So really important to, yes, we need to have the knowledge of it. And we need to understand what the possibilities could be. But the actual issue is that each situation is going to be different. And the misunderstanding that happens a lot is, well, doesn't my client automatically get the deposit?
That's what the sellers were thinking all
Right.
this time, right?
That's not the case. The deposit sits in a trust account. That trust account that money can only be moved a certain ways. And when a deal collapses, then has to be by some kind of legal instructions from both parties or a court order. They automatically do not get the deposit.
One quick question, if
Yeah.
the seller and buyer both agreed that I'll forfeit my deposit, the buyer deposit.
Yeah.
Then the seller can get it, right?
As
If they
long,
both agree.
if they both agree, it's basically,
Mutual release.
it's a mutual release that says that the buyer, they release each other, and the release is based on this money being paid to whoever,
Whoever, yeah.
right? Yeah, Matthew.
A question, if the buyer releases the deposit to the seller, does the agent still get some commission out of that, or does the seller keep all of the deposit?
It would be depending on the contract you have. So for instance, if you're representing the buyer and the buyer did not close, then if you, all the documentation, your buyer representation agreement, and we can prove that the buyer did not close by their negligence, then we would have to go to small claims court and sue them to see if we can enforce our buyer representation agreement. You do not get, unless it's built in
In
the mutual release, okay? But we'll have some questions here shortly. Phil's just joining us.
Hello, good morning.
Hey, Phil, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Scott?
Great, great. We were just talking about situations where unfortunately buyers or sellers don't close, and us as realtors on, what's our steps, what do we have to look for? And maybe just introduce yourself. Phil, and thanks for coming on and addressing this.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. As mentioned, my name is Phil Couillet. I have a law firm called Couillet Law, and we're a full service law firm, which means that we have multiple practice areas, being civil and commercial litigation, residential and commercial real estate, corporate law, and sports and entertainment. So I'll discuss a little bit now just about the real estate part of it and what buyers and sellers need to know as well as agents with respect to when there is an aborted transaction. So essentially, when you're on the buyer side of these types of issues, there's plenty of risk, and the risk is that if the buyers are unable to close, one, they're subject to forfeiting their deposit. So if there's a deposit that was put forward in the agreement of purchase and sale, that is likely going to be forfeited to the seller if, for whatever reason, the buyer cannot close, and that becomes a breach of contract. Sometimes, and what you'll notice is that there are extensions that are granted, and sometimes the sellers will ask for additional deposits. Those can also be forfeited if the transaction is not closed on the extension date. So what buyers need to be aware of is that one, those deposits can be forfeited, and two, if the sellers are unable to sell the property for the same price or more than what was in the original contract with the buyers are then liable for that difference. And essentially, the only way to really kind of defend that is to show that the sellers didn't do anything to kind of mitigate that loss, or if they can prove that when the property was eventually resold, that the sellers, grossly undermarketed it or undersold it. And the only way to kind of combat that is through like a formal appraisal or something of that nature. On the sales side, what you should be advising your clients is to do your best to relist the property, start marketing it again as soon as possible, to see how quickly you can sell it, number one, because that would also mitigate damages with respect to additional carrying costs. So there's likely mortgages on these properties that got to continue to get paid. And there's property taxes and all different kinds of carrying costs with the property that are associated. So getting it relisted, trying to get it sold is one way to show that you're trying to mitigate damages, which would allow you to then bring a successful claim to not only get the forfeiture of the deposits, but also that difference in sale price. So if you were to sell it for a lower amount, you can show that you did everything you could to try to get it up to that first contract price. And then as well that it wasn't, undersold or anything of that nature. So on that side of it, as a realtor, you want to advise the sellers to do their best to mitigate those damages, try to get it sold for an appropriate price as soon as possible, and then you can still go after the buyers for that difference.
Okay. Another one that we're getting, and it seems that we get this more so now, is people that put a deposit down on a pre-construction condo per se. It seems to be the most we're getting now. which was, they bought it a few years ago. Now the builder's informing them that occupancy is coming up, and they're going, I don't have the money to close. The price is way lower than what I paid for it. I, I, they're telling me that I might be able to, do an assignment, but these are the calls we're getting. And unfortunately, the situation is majority of the time, they don't have time. They don't have enough time to try and do an assignment. The assignment price and the amount of the deposit is just so much higher than what's going on in the current marketplace that's not going to happen. What situations have you come across this, and what's the end result, and how aggressive are the builders in pursuing the original buyers?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have come across this in a couple instances, and the builders have the same rights as the sellers would have in a traditional resale. Meaning,
Okay.
if the buyers do not close, they can go after forfeiture of those deposits. The best way to get around this is if the builder agrees to an assignment, to assign it. Because at least that would protect the deposits. You're able to kind of get that assignment fee. And typically, what a builder will do is say it cannot be assigned for a price that's less than X dollars per square foot, for instance. So that keeps kind of with consistency of what other sales that they have going on in that particular project. So they might say, look, we'll allow you to assign it. There's an assignment fee that you might need to pay. However, if you do assign it, you've got to assign it at a price per square foot of X. And then if you're able to do that, then they'll let you out of the contract. So that is the unfortunate part. I did have a client that, I guess, due to the cost of living in Canada, did the same thing, had a pre-construction condominium, and they weren't able to close. They couldn't come up with the money, and they actually moved out of the country and just said, you know what, we can't afford to live here. They forfeited the deposit. What I noticed is the builder in this particular instance, and I think this is probably, I know it's a generality, but I'm going to assume that most builders are having a hard time closing on these condos now. They sent us a bunch of demands letters saying, we're going to bring a claim against the buyer, we're going to bring a claim against your client for X, Y, and Z if they don't close. Then they sent us another email back saying, hey, we're willing to grant an extension. Are they able to close? And then I'm like, no, they're not. They're not going to close. And then they eventually came back again and said, you know what? If finance is an issue, we're willing to give them like a VTB or a vendor take back mortgage on the property, just so they close. So there is pressure on the builders as well. I think they're reluctant actually to go through court and to make these claims. I think they want to close. They'll do everything they can in this particular market. But that is a generality. I don't think that's going to be the case for everybody. But that was kind of the experience I had with uh, some
Okay. Yeah.
builder type
I-
condos.
Yeah, Michelle and I were at a conference where there was some pre-builders, and they did come out and said, like, in some cases, they are offering vendor take-backs or discounted mortgages to try and get it closed. So
That's right.
if, as an agent, if you're dealing with a buyer in that situation, think about what the other possibilities are, right? Maybe they look at partnering with somebody. In some cases, that will help, right? Where the buyers will look at giving up percentage of ownership if someone else steps in, because the fact that they're either going to lose their deposit and possibly more, but at least think about the other options and be in a position where you can reach out or have the lawyer reach out to the other party and say, here are different scenarios. Would any of these, one of those could be a vendor take back. One of them could be an extension. One might be as simple as a rent to own situation to extend the closing date, but to alleviate some of the carrying costs of the people. But we're definitely seeing more and more of this, Bill. So that's why we really wanted to sort of get some answers on things like that.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend now, and of course, because the price of condos is kind of dropping, and people have paid more in the pre-construction phase. So some are
Yeah.
just walking away and taking the loss. They're saying, look, we aren't going to close, and let the builder come after me. Or like you said, there are alternate options where the builders are reluctant, so they might be more inclined to offer different incentives like vendor takebacks and maybe even price abatements to a degree. Some of them really can't do that because of the financing and how the banks have kind of lent them for the building process. So that's not something that happens all the time, but that could be something.
Okay.
So there are different options, as you mentioned, Scott.
Okay. Is there anything else in the real estate environment that you're seeing that are like outside of this, some of the issues that you're seeing come across your desk, or that you could sort of give us some highlights on as realtors on what's out there that we might be seeing? I know this is the biggest one, is obviously the closures not happening. We are seeing more power sales, listings coming out. So it's just a matter of, is there anything else that's out there that we need to be aware of as realtors to try and protect our clients?
Yeah, you know what? It varies. It's a very broad scope as far as kind of what to look at. It's kind of fact specific as to different situations. However, I can give one that kind of might be relevant with respect to this market now and kind of the time period we're in as far as the seasons are concerned. With respect to selling properties where there is a pool located at the property. Typically, because it's winter and pools are closed, buyers don't really have an opportunity to do an inspection as to whether the heater is working or the pump is working or all of those different equipment that go along with the pool. And what sellers can kind of do to protect themselves, because typically what can happen is you might find that the buyer will waive an inspection of that equipment. Um, However, as a seller, what you don't want to do is put a representation and warranty in the agreement of purchase and sale that it's going to be in good working order on closing. So let's say you close in February, they don't open the pool until May or June. Things can happen in that 4 or 5 months where it's going to be difficult for you as a seller to prove that it was in good working order in February. So you might want to review whether or not you want to put that type of warranty in. Some ways that you can kind of mitigate against that as a seller is if you put in a clause where there's like a holdback for pool equipment just in case. So you can limit it so that they can't just say, now this deficiency is cost $10,000. If you put something there that there's a holdback, say, look, we're going to cap, damages with respect to equipment if it's not working when you open the pool in June, and you have evidence that this wasn't working at the date of closing, then you can kind of find a way to cap that. So that's one issue that you may want to look into just with respect to selling properties in the winter when there's a pool involved, because there may not be ample time or opportunity to inspect the equipment to make sure that it's working. I would also advise the sellers to keep any type of evidence that they may have when they close that pool, or maybe a report from the company that closed it to say that, look, everything we did an inspection, everything was in good working order when we closed the pool. If there's any picture evidence or photo evidence from the summer before showing people using the pool, that may pay dividends in the future if you have a buyer that comes back later and tries to claim post-closing 4 or 5 months later that the equipment wasn't working. So I'm actually in active litigation on a case with that right now.
Okay. So when you put in, so it wouldn't be a condition in any way, it's just a standard, a clause stating that the seller's representing upon closing that the pool was in good working order. However, in the event that upon opening the pool, and I guess you really got to specify that it's being opened by a professional and not just by the new buyers trying to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And that a proper inspection is done, and then you can get a report. But in the agreement, instead of putting in a warranty, because I actually have had a situation where I represented the buyer and I put in a warranty, and the sellers agreed to it. The next spring, when they took off the winter cover, the whole liner had all peeled back and was all like had to totally be redone. It was $15,000.
Right.
But yeah, And the seller's going, well, you know, it was fine when we closed it, but you warranted it was in good working order. When we had it professionally open, they pulled this back and it was real. Anyway, so, but representing the seller, you can basically put in a limit of damages and then as a holdback, and that would be the limit. So in the event that there was nothing and it was inspected, how long after that inspection does the seller get the money back? Is there a process to that?
Yeah, so typically what would happen is you could specify that, upon opening the pool, like they would have to let us know. So they would verify it, open the pool within a certain amount of time frame. If there's no issues, then we would release the holdback to the
Okay.
sellers. If there are, then we address it then and there. And then there's going to be an evidentiary issue as to like, was this an issue on the date of closing? Did it happen? Did it occur after? So it's very important for the sellers to kind of document what the condition of the equipment was or what the condition of the pool was at the time of closing or close to, because that's going to inform the judge if it does go to court that at least this was in place there. It's very unlikely that this occurred at closing. Perhaps over the winter months, I don't know, a rodent or an animal got in there and chewed the wires and now it's not working, right? But we can prove that it was on closing. So that's something to think about.
Okay, good. Now, what about representing the buyer? How do you protect the buyer? Put your other hat on.
Yeah, so so the buyer, you definitely want to have a rep and warranty in there that it's going to be working on closing. If you can get in to inspect the equipment, or if you can ask the sellers if they have an inspection report or anything, any type of report as to when the pool was closed, or to get information as to who closed the pool, then perhaps you can do that due diligence ahead of time before closing, before firming up the deal to contact them, figure out, hey, I know that you're the maintenance company for this pool. Is there any issues that we need to worry about? So there's ways you can do that, but certainly put in the rep and warranty in the agreement and purchase and sale that would be working on closing and that it survives closing, so that this clause doesn't merge on closing, it survives after the fact, so that you can then go back and if you need to bring a claim, you can. Another way to do it is also to put in a holdback if you like, to say, okay, up front, we're gonna at least at the very minimum, we're gonna have some money set aside so that if there is damage, at least we're compensated to some degree without having to go to litigation to recover it. We know that we can get this pretty much right away. And then if we need to kind of go after the rest, we can try to do that. If it was kind of like an egregious misrepresentation, or if you have what's called a latent defect, where it was something where the seller should have disclosed it, then there's ways around that later on. But that's something you could do as well. But I would certainly recommend putting in the rep and warranty.
Okay, great. Any questions for Phil, anybody?
I have one question in 20 parts. No, just one question. Has there been a situation where the builder denies the sale of a pre-con? Is there a situation that does happen like that?
Like as an assignment?
As an assignment, you mean?
Either an assignment or, it's a pre-con. They said, hey, your move-in date is this. You can sell it. They give them the permission. But let's say the builder decides, you know what? You're not selling it. Would there be a reason for that to happen? The builder itself.
Yeah, builders can deny your ability to assign the unit. They would make you close. And then after the fact, you can resell it afterwards, of course. Once you own it, you're on title, you can sell it. So yeah, I'm not sure the exact reasons. I think it varies. Maybe there's issues potentially with that assignment amount. Maybe that they don't think that someone would be able to assign it for the per square footage amount that they're looking for, so they can deny it. Depends on if the assignee is going to have the ability to close. Maybe they're looking at it like, you know what, we don't want to take the risk that this person may not close. Maybe they don't qualify for funding or that nature or things of that nature. So it's difficult to kind of determine their rationale for it. I don't represent a lot of builders. It's mostly the users or the end users that are purchasing the property. So there have been cases though, just to answer the question, where they will deny your ability to assign it, and that's typically in the agreement of purchase and sale at the outset. So part of what we do is we help our realtors and our clients do a contract review at the beginning, because there is that 10-day cooling off period. So buyers can take advantage of that to review the agreement, understand it, because if they're like, look, I may assign this in the future, they might want to take a look at the agreement of purchase and sale and see what it says about that.
Super. John, you got a question?
Yeah, I've got a question on the interim closing versus final closing. So on the registration system that we search to see the most recent sale, is that only on the final registration when the condo corp hands it over to the new condo corp from the builder, or will that also show up on an interim occupancy period closing?
So typically the new buyers will not show up on title to the property until the final closing. So they'll get occupancy, and you'll be responsible for the payments, but until they do the full title transfer, they likely won't show up on title.
So there's no way to verify whether a condo is in interim versus final, really, unless you go and talk to the builder.
Yeah, because they send out the notices to the unit buyers or the purchasers, so they'll know when their occupancy date is. And then once that occurs, they do the occupancy. Normally, in the normal fashion, it's maybe like 3 to 4 months from then to when the final closing is and when they basically register the transfer.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, thoughts? Nancy, you had something, but did it get answered or?
Well, no, I was just wondering if the whole pool scenario applies to septic tanks because I deal with a lot of that up here. And if I sell a property in the wintertime, it's hard for the home inspector to inspect the septic because depending on if they have the green lids or some of them are actually concrete that you have to dig down 2 feet. So I'm kind of assuming that the pool thing applies to the septic as well.
It would. It would typically apply if it's included in the agreement of purchase and sale that it would be taken over by the buyer, which it typically is. Um, from the buyer perspective, yes, you want to make sure that it's in good working order. And if you can inspect it, you want to have those same protections in that, when we have the ability to open it or take a look at it in the spring or the summer or whenever it warms up and we have that ability, we want to be able to determine what the situation is with it. Typically from my understanding, I do deals with septic tanks. I'm just trying to recall off the top of my head the last one I did, um, whether or not we ran into this issue or not, as to their ability to inspect or not. I do know that typically there are the companies that are responsible for kind of, I guess, cleaning it out or removing the waste from it. That can kind of give reports as to how full it is, how it's operating and that kind of thing. So perhaps the maintenance company or the company involved with dealing with the septic would have some recent records from the buyer side that there could be some due diligence. The seller as well has a duty to disclose if there's any issues that can't be readily discoverable. They would need to disclose if there's issues there, or they could run the risk of being pursued for a claim of latent defect or latent deficiency.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other general questions for Phil or anything like that? But I definitely wanted to cover off the aborted transactions because we are seeing, and we're usually the first call of, unless we get a buyer that ghosts us, and then it's like, okay, now what do we do? So, and I wanted to make sure we got that covered off because, recently there was an article that was put out where there was a settlement of $1.8 million against the buyers.
It was a judgment,
right?
so they went to court on it. The judge found against the buyer.
Yeah, and I think in that case, the buyer was trying to say that the seller didn't make enough effort to try to limit the damages. And you mentioned that earlier, where you've got to, as soon as you know there's a default in that case or aborted a deal, what are the steps you need to take to make sure you can show that you tried to limit the damages? So
Yeah, and another part of that, not issue, but a fact in that case was that they listed it. They went through MLS as well. They tried to do all kinds of ways of marketing it, and the sellers even considered leasing out the property as well to cover some of the carrying costs of that. So
Okay.
because it wasn't only the difference in price, they also tried to recover the carrying cost, which in that case was $550,000. So it was
Wow.
top of the 1.8 million price deficiency.
Yeah. Okay. Super.
No one has any other questions. Phil and the rest of his team are joining us in person in March to give a small presentation about them, their services, and what is going on in the real estate market, especially where there's legal concerns, like kind of what we talked about today. So if you don't have any questions now, I will send out his team's information. And then we'll see them in March.
Yeah, and prior to that, if there are any topics that you'd like us to cover during that meeting as well, we'd be happy to do that. So if you have any suggestions or things you're thinking about, please send it our way, and we'll work that into our discussion.
Yeah,
Super.
definitely.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Thanks,
All right.
everybody, for we really appreciate it. Good information. And again, be the professional. Do your due diligence on everything that you're doing. Okay. All right. Take care, everybody. Thanks again, Phil.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you all.